Coming Home. Written by Ink in My Heart and on the Page. And read by Eleanor Elizabeth. Chapter 5. Part 5. "Any signs of the web-slinger?" Captain Steve Rogers asked over the comms. "None," Tony grumbled from the top of the building he stood on. "Friday has scanned all the security cameras, and there's no sign of him. I say we call it a day." "It's only been a couple of hours." Clint's voice came over his comms. He was perched on a nearby building, sharp eyes scanning the area for any signs of the red and blue-clad figure. He might not have started patrolling yet. "Whoever they are doesn't seem to have a strict routine," Natasha added from her position on the ground. "Except he's never really out during the mornings." "Great. How about you give me a call when he's out and about?" Tony suggested. "Why so anxious to leave, Tony?" Natasha asked. "Does it have something to do with the fact that we suddenly aren't allowed on your floor?" "We have a communal floor," Tony grumbled. "Why you need to be on my personal floor, I'll never understand." While the Avengers were aware that Tony had a son who had been kidnapped, they didn't know that Peter had returned. Rhodey knew him well enough to know not to say anything just yet to their fellow teammates. While Tony trusted his team, and they were his family, he didn't need them in his business just yet. He wanted to give himself, Peter, and Pepper a chance to adapt to the new change in their life. "It's only 5, Steve said. "Let's give it another hour, and then we'll call it." Tony groaned, but conceded to another hour of hanging out on a rooftop. "Friday, text Pepper and tell her I'll be another hour," Tony said. "Message sent," Friday responded. After a moment, the AI continued. "Pepper has responded, boss. It reads, 1 hour, don't be any later." "Trust me, nothing is keeping me out here for more than an hour," Tony said. "What are they up to Friday? Is Peter okay?" "They are currently in the living room looking through the IKEA website," Friday relayed. "I believe they are looking at things to decorate Peter's room with. It appears they have made a game out of the names." Tony grinned and felt a twinge of envy that he was missing out on this. His father was always working, never really making the time or effort for Tony. He had already missed so much of Peter's life. He really didn't want to miss out on any more. While being Iron Man was important, Peter was more so. Tony never wanted to be like his father, who was never there and rarely showed interest in what Tony was working on. Rhodey landed on the same building as Tony, faceplate snapping back as he walked heavily over to Tony. Retracting his own faceplate, Tony quirked a brow at Rhodey. I called this building?" Tony lifted an arm and pointed. "Your building is that way." "You're going to have to tell them soon." Rhodey ignored Tony's quip. "We are a team, and they have helped you try and find Peter." "I know," Tony grumbled. "I will tell them, soon. I just want Peter to myself for a bit. I want him to like me." Rhodey's expression softened. "Tones, I'm pretty sure you don't have to worry about Peter liking you or not." Tony shrugged. "I said I never wanted to be like my dad, and yet I lost him." "You didn't lose him," Rhodey scoffed. "He was stolen from you, and I watched you nearly kill yourself trying to find him. You're already 10 times the father that Howard was." Tony let out a shaky breath. "I got my family back, Rhodey. I just want that to myself for a little bit, before I share Peter with you all." "I get that," Rhodey said. "And that's cool, but you can't keep him to yourself forever. I want to show off my nephew." "Being Peter's uncle does not make you any cooler," Tony pointed out. Yeah, it does," Rhodey scoffed. "Did he choke on a pancake for you?" "Please, I'm his favorite Avenger," Tony grinned. So much warmth was bubbling up in his chest, he was sure that his arc reactor was glowing brighter. Peter found it easy to be comfortable in the presence of Pepper. She was so much like May that in no time the two of them had made themselves comfortable in his room as they worked together in an attempt to design the type of room that he wanted. "Are you sure?" Peter hesitated, as Pepper added yet another item to the online shopping cart. They had moved on from IKEA, once their laughter had subsided, and they had designed a room using only items that started with the letter O, and they were now on Amazon looking at posters. "Of course," Pepper smiled. "This is your room, Peter. We want you to be comfortable here." "We've already spent so much money, though," Peter said, still trying to wrap his head around that fact. Growing up, He had never gone without anything, but he knew how hard May and Ben had worked and had never wanted to take advantage of that. "How about we get 2 posters and call it a night?" Pepper suggested. "Yeah, okay." Peter's shoulders relaxed. He grabbed the tablet and quickly searched for the 2 Star Wars posters that he'd been eyeing. "Can I get these ones?" He showed the tablet to Pepper. "Of course." Pepper beamed and smoothly tapped her way to the checkout. "Your dad should be back soon." "Really?" Peter asked, perking up. He honestly hadn't thought Tony would be gone for as long as he had been. Peter knew for a fact that they would not be meeting Spider-Man that afternoon, and wondered why they'd stuck around for so long waiting, when it was clear after the first 2 hours that he wasn't going to show. "Yep, you should be able to see him fly back to the tower," Pepper said. Without waiting for Pepper, Peter dashed from his bedroom to the living room, skidding on his socks as he all but sprinted to the big glass windows. He searched the skyline for the familiar red and gold suit, but the New York skyline was empty. "There he is." Pepper joined him by the window and pointed. Peter bounced lightly on his feet as he saw Iron Man flying through the air, heading directly towards them. Peter's jaw dropped as he watched Iron Man grow closer and closer until he was almost pushed against the glass as he watched the suit land on the landing above them. "Awesome." Peter's breath fogged up the glass as the suit was pulled off Tony and he walked towards the building. "It is a sight," Pepper agreed. Only when Tony was no longer visible did Peter move away from the window. "What did you want for dinner?" Pepper asked. Peter shrugged. "I'm fine with anything." "How about pizza?" Pepper suggested. "What toppings do you like?" "Meat lovers," Tony answered as he strode out of the elevator. "That was amazing!" Peter cried as he bounded over to Tony's side. "And the way you landed, the timing and the programming, it was unreal. The calculations alone are impressive, but you make it look so easy." Tony reached out and ruffled Peter's hair. "Thanks, kid. We had a few practice runs, that's for sure." "Did you talk to Spider-Man?" Peter asked, sliding onto the kitchen stool as Pepper handed Tony a water bottle. "He was a no-show." Tony unscrewed the lid and took a sip. Peter tried to keep a straight face. "Oh, that's too bad." Tony shrugged. "He'll come out sooner or later." "You're not gonna hurt him, right?" Peter asked. "It's just to talk to him." "I promise, Peter," Tony said seriously. "We just want to talk to him." Peter nodded, relaxing into the stool. "Hey, can I invite Ned over?" "He's your best friend, right?" Pepper asked. "Sure, I don't see why not." "He goes to Midtown with you?" Tony asked. "Yeah," Peter grinned. "He's going to die when he comes here. It's going to be awesome." Ned didn't die when he stepped into the tower, but it was a close thing. His lips moved, but no words came out, as he just took everything in. Peter had gone with Happy to pick Ned up from school, leg bouncing impatiently in the back seat. Ned had been waiting eagerly, duffel bag on one shoulder, ready for the best sleepover in their entire lives. Happy put up the divider the moment the 2 of them had started rambling about what they were going to do at the tower. "Hi, Ned," Pepper greeted, as Peter leads his best friend to the kitchen. Pepper is set up in the kitchen, paper spread out before her and her tablet in her hands. "It's nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too," Ned managed to get out, but it comes out in an awed whisper that makes Pepper smirk. "What are you boys going to do?" Pepper asked. "I'm going to go give Ned the tour, and then we're going to build his new Lego Death Star," Peter said. "It's 3,803 pieces, Ned added, finally finding his voice. "Sounds fun," Pepper smiled, but Peter thought she was just humouring them. "Your dad is in the lab, Peter." "We'll go say hi," Peter said. Dragging his best friend by the elbow, they stopped by Peter's room first to drop off Ned's bag before Peter gave him the tour. Ned was the perfect friend, gasping and awing in the right places, and by the time they got to the lab, he was a blubbering mess of excitement and awe. "Oh, and I forgot to tell you," Ned said as they stepped into the lab. "MJ asked where you were." "She did?" Peter frowned. "Yeah, she asked if you were sick." Ned shrugged as he spun in a slow circle, taking everything in. "What did you tell her?" Peter asked. "I lied and said you were sick," Ned said. "I don't think she believed me, though." "Do you think she knows?" Peter asked. "Knows what?" Tony asked, suddenly appearing behind them. Both jumped, whipping around to face the older man who was smirking at them. Though Peter hadn't seen him when they first entered, he knew that Tony had been listening the whole time. "That I'm your long-lost kidnapped son," Peter said. Pepper's been keeping a tight lid on the media, Tony said. So unless your friend is some secret mind-reading witch, or Ned here is blabbed... Iron Man knows my name, Ned whispered. I don't think she knows, Tony finished. Ned and Peter looked at each other, faces serious. She definitely knows. Did you blab? Tony frowned at Ned. No, Ned said mournfully, but MJ can totally read minds. Peter nodded solemnly. She knows everything. Tony looked between the two boys. I can't tell if you're being serious or not. It's fine, Peter said. I'll talk to her when I go back to school on Monday. Hey, what are you working on? Tony gazed at Peter for a beat, before he sighed and waved them over to his workbench, where a hologram was being projected. I'm working on Spider-Man's suit. You're building Spider-Man a suit? Ned yelled, looking wide at Peter. It's awesome, Peter said, unable to stop the wide grin that spread across his face. Dude, Iron Man is making Spider-Man a suit, Ned repeated. That is so awesome. Tony's eyes widened as he watched his son and his best friend go through an overly complicated secret handshake, and by the time they were finished, he could only stare. Can Ned see the suit? Peter asked, turning to look pleadingly at Tony. Tony took one look at his son's big brown Bambi eyes and immediately caved. Ah, shit, he thought, and looked to the ceiling. Friday, bring out the suit. In a pace that Tony didn't think was possible for two teenage boys, Peter and Ned were across the workshop in an instant, staring as Friday brought the suit out from where it was being stored. While Ned and Peter awed over the suit, Tony pulled out his phone and composed a text message. Is there any way to say no to Peter when he pulls out those damn Bambi eyes? T. He didn't have to wait long when May Parker responded. I call it the Bambi effect. What's worse, he has no idea he's doing it. He's oblivious to the power he has, so he won't abuse it. Good luck, though. M. Shaking his head, Tony slipped his phone back into his pocket and crossed the workshop to the boys, and he was glad to see that they were only looking and not touching. What do you think? Tony asked. It's awesome, Ned said. Have you accommodated his web shooters? Sure have, Tony said. I'm working on improving them, but I haven't figured out his formula yet. Improving them how? Peter asked. They hadn't discussed this when Tony had allowed Peter to help him work on the suit one afternoon. They discussed more about the flexibility of the suit and what it was made out of, and how Tony was working on keeping the wiring as flat and flexible as possible. More web shooter combos, Tony shrugged. Give Spider-Man a bit more to work with than just his usual webs. Ned bounced up and down at the balls of his feet at the idea. Wicked. What about the mask? Where are the goggles? Tony snorted. Those cheap things? Please. I put in these. Tony pointed at the panels that would be Spider-Man's eyes. Give him some more range to see out of. Are they tinted? Peter asked, reaching out with a finger to tap on the eye lenses. Semi, Tony said. He needs to be able to see properly out of them. Are they reactive? Peter asked. They look so... big. I mean, Spider-Man has smaller goggles, right? What if these are too big? Yeah, Spider-Man's goggles move with his eyes, Ned added. Have you compensated for the sensory input that might occur? Tony blinked. Sensory input? Yeah, like what if the goggles react to him so that he can focus more clearly during a fight? Peter suggested. Too much going on, and it could be a lot, Ned continued. So the goggles help him block out one thing so he can focus on another. How many times have you two watched those Spider-Man videos? Tony asked, looking between the two boys with a frown. Tony had been watching the video since Friday had first picked it up, and yet these two boys had managed to pick up on some things that he'd missed. A few, Peter hedged. We're big fans, Ned nodded. We should go, Peter said, grabbing Ned by the elbow and backing away. We have a Lego Death Star to put together before Ned goes home. What about the suit? Ned whispered, not as quietly as he should have, as Tony could still hear. Later, Peter hissed, louder and with an awkward grin. Bye, we'll be in the living room. Tony watched as his son dragged Ned from the lab, the door closing behind them with a gentle click. That was weird. Tony's eyes narrowed. He shook his head and looked back down at the suit. Friday, bring up a video of Spider-Man. Focus on the mask. Iron Man is making you a suit, Ned said, as Peter dragged him down the hall. Shh, Peter hissed. Dude, that was close. Come on, Ned waved his hand. He didn't know. Peter shook his head. We have to be more careful. I'm not ready to tell them yet. I know Tony said that the Avengers only wanted to talk to Spider-Man. The Avengers want to talk to Spider-Man? Ned interrupted. Why didn't you tell me? I'm telling you now, Peter said. They want to talk to me. See if I'm Avenger material. You're gonna be an Avenger, Ned repeated, wide-eyed. Dude, your life is awesome. That's if Tony doesn't freak out that I'm Spider-Man, Peter said. I overheard him talking to Rhodey, and he's really happy that I'm home. Of course they are, Ned said. You're their kid. I know, Peter said. I don't want to make them unhappy. I heard Pepper crying last night. She was saying how much she had missed. I don't want to make her cry again. They came out of the hallway to find Pepper sitting at the table. She continued to work as they stared at her. She must have felt their presence, because she looked up and smiled at them. No evidence that she'd been crying only just last night. Hey, you boys okay? Pepper asked. Can I get you anything? We're good, Peter said. We're just gonna start on the Lego. Is it okay if we use the living room? Go ahead, Pepper smiled. Peter nudged Ned, and the two scurried past Pepper and settled around the coffee table with Ned's Lego set. Dude, Ned leaned in close, keeping his voice low. What are you gonna do when you start patrolling again? Peter's face paled. I have no idea. Boss, I've finished searching for Richard and Mary Parker, Friday said. Tony looked over his shoulder and found the lab was empty. Where are Peter and Ned? In the living room, Friday responded promptly. All right, lock down the lab, sweetheart. I don't want either of them hearing this, Tony said. Show me what you found. The image of Spider-Man's mask was replaced by several holograms of files. Tony sat on his stool, arms crossed over his chest as he looked at them. Break it down for me, Tony requested sharply. Richard and Mary Parker were scientists, Friday said. They worked for several corporations, but most notably Oscorp. Around the same time that Peter was taken, they left Oscorp and were privately funded by an unknown benefactor. Obi, Tony growled. After they left Oscorp, there were no journals or publications made by either of the Parkers. Their work was deemed classified. 3 years later, they were killed in a privately chartered flight. Anything on their financials? Tony asked. I'm sorry, boss, Friday said. I haven't been able to locate anything significant in their financials. You did good, Friday, Tony assured his AI. This may be something our super spies need to find out. He sighed heavily. It looked like he was finally going to have to involve the Avengers. What about Ben Parker? New files popped up in the hologram. I've gone through Ben Parker's files, boss, Friday said. There is a storage unit in Queens under his name. It has been a yearly rental for the past 11 years. There are 2 mailing addresses attached to the lease. A rental agreement was brought to the front of the hologram, where Tony read over the address. The first was an address that Tony didn't recognize, and had the name Richard Parker attached to it. The second was to the apartment where Peter had been living, Ben's name attached to it. From what Tony could gather, Ben had been the secondary person on the lease. What happened to the storage unit when Ben passed? Tony asked. It appears the unit is a yearly rental, Friday said. The year is not up yet, so the unit is still active. Has anyone been to the unit since Ben passed? Tony asked. There was a pause from Friday. It appears that the last person to visit the storage unit was Ben Parker. Tony nodded. Good. I want to go check out the storage unit ASAP. Mark some time on Monday. I'll take a look once I've dropped Peter off at school. Of course, boss, Friday responded. Tony sighed and ran a hand down his face. I really hope you didn't know Ben, he mumbled. For Peter and May's sake. Hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. It's Eleanor, and I hope you're having a lovely day today. We're back, part 5. We are officially a third of the way through this fic. I've kind of been getting obsessed with it again. I did reread this whole fic twice this week, so I've been excited to get on it. It's so cool getting to see the beginnings of the Avengers now and how they're working as a team, and just like them out looking for Peter, and Peter's just sat there like, well, they're never gonna find me because I know I'm here. The way that Peter's like, so did you like see Spider-Man at all? And I'm like, oh, you little actor. I can't decide whether or not I think he's acting this well, and like he's just pulling it off immensely, or if he's doing it really badly but they're just like too like distracted to notice. But what did you guys think of this chapter? Did you like it? Please let me know in the comments down below. I love talking about like the fic and the chapters in the comments. It's always really fun for me. You can also like the video, you know, if you liked it, and to boost my serotonin levels. You can also subscribe to be notified whenever I make new videos. Isn't that fun? It's there. It's alright. Listen, it happens. I also have a Discord if you want to join that. It's a fun time. And I also have other things, you know, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I also have a Ko-Fi if you want to support me there. Well, and yeah. How are you guys doing today? Is it a good day for you? It's not been a good day for me, but we're recording anyway. And it's honestly really cheered me up. I needed this today. So let me know how you guys are doing. It's been nice to see you guys in the comments again and trying to be more active in that. And you guys' comments always just brighten my day. So until I see you again, be sure to practice some self-care. Look after yourself. Go to sleep. Get your 8 hours. Listen, I know I'm bad at it, but I have an excuse. I have insomnia, and they're going to fix that. Now I got put on medication, so hopefully I will be sleeping soon. Drink lots of water, which I do. I drink so much water. You don't even know how hydrated I am. Get on my level. Be on my hydration gang. Eat your fruit and veg. 5 a day, people. That's what you need. And don't forget to brush your teeth. It's important. And yes, this is a threat. And I will catch you guys later.